Sunday was a crazy day in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. That Jacksonville-Pittsburgh game was something else. And then, even though it didn't start off that way, the Saints-Vikings game was truly something else. And in those type of situations, it's really unfortunate. Somebody had to win, somebody has to lose and go home. And on Sunday, it was the Saints that had their hearts ripped out. It was the Saints who had their feet really on the throats of the Minnesota Vikings, only to let off the pressure, and the Vikings close it out, seal the deal, the last play of the game, a big spectacular touchdown by Stephon Diggs. And of course, the initial reaction is going to be from many Saints fans and many fans in general, is that it's Marcus Williams' fault. What was he thinking? What was he doing? Why wouldn't he try to wrap up Stephon Diggs? Why wouldn't he try to tackle Stephon Diggs? Even if he was afraid of potentially getting an interference penalty is better than that Olay that he did. And look, Marcus Williams made a mistake. He made a bad play, and his team ultimately paid a severe price for it. And I understand the notion of knowing it's been several years since the Saints have been in this type of position with this type of team that looked like they could be a threat to go to the Super Bowl. To lose in such a heartbreaking fashion is really, really tough. But we really need to pump the brakes on blaming Marcus Williams. This is what I hate sometimes about sports and being a sports fan. There are so many things that happen throughout the ebb and flow of a game, but ultimately we so often remember one play, one moment in time, one player, one success, one mistake, and act like that was everything and the whole thing when it comes to the outcome of the game. And it just simply isn't the case. And people need to take it easy on Marcus Williams. And I applaud him for stepping up to the plate when he didn't need to. And quite frankly, he didn't have to. And he took ownership for one mistake. And it breaks my heart when I see fans do this. You saw this a couple of years ago with the Packers and Brandon Bostic for that botch on the onside kick that Seattle ended up recovering and forcing overtime. Like, people are forgetting that the Packers had a 16-0 lead going into the second half of that game on the road. And like, that one play by Brandon Bostic was ultimately what cost them. No, it wasn't. If you don't let the Seahawks score the one play, they don't have the opportunity for the onside kick to potentially recover. Then they still had to go down and score a touchdown, what they did, force overtime, then score a touchdown in overtime to win it. I think about my Chicago Cubs, the 2003 NLCS. They're up 3-2. Mark Pryor's on the mound. 8th inning, up 3-0. And the Bartman play happens with one out. And for close to a decade and a half, you still had a lot of Cubs fans that deep down hated Steve Bartman, blaming him for what happened, which was completely and totally ridiculous. There's no guarantee Moises Alou would have even came up with that catch. But let's not forget the fact that that was just one play, and the media and so many other people just latched onto Bartman and made him the face of that choke job by the Cubs. The Cubs ultimately gave up 8 runs in that 8th inning. Mark Pryor mentally imploded. Alex Gonzalez, a Gold Glove caliber shortstop at that stage of his career, botched an easy double play ball. There was still a Game 7 with Kerry Wood on the mound. And even when he hit that 3-run homer, he kind of got shelled in that game. But the Cubs still had a 6-5 lead at one point in time. And then Dave Veers and Mark Guthrie struck. The point I'm getting at is, it wasn't Steve Bartman. It's the fact that the team mentally imploded in Game 6, then came back the next night, had a Game 7, and still couldn't get the job done. It's like Boston fans blaming Bill Buckner for what happened in Game 6 of the '86 World Series. The ball got between his legs. Guess what? There was still a Game 7. The Red Sox still could have won that World Series, so it is completely and totally ridiculous to blame one player and one play for what happened and the end result. And it's equally ridiculous to blame somebody like Marcus Williams for one play, for one mistake. Never mind, a little bit earlier on, you had Marshawn Lattimore, the Defensive Rookie of the Year, commit not one, but 2 penalties on Adam Thielen. And Thielen still caught the damn ball. Never mind the fact that you have Sean Payton wasting challenges, which is completely and totally ridiculous when Keenum clearly wasn't down. So whoever gave him that advice gave him bad advice, and they just randomly threw it out there when they really didn't need to. Never mind the fact that the Saints, going into a road playoff game, were down 17-0 at halftime. So maybe the defense in general, everybody involved, not just Marcus Williams, should have played better in the first half. Maybe more importantly, that allegedly high-powered, high-octane Saints offense that did dick in the first half should have shown up, and maybe Marcus Williams is never in that position. You're going to blame one guy for one play. You could also point to the coaching and say, why the hell would you have anybody defending anywhere on the middle of the field? In no circumstance whatsoever can you let them get to the sideline. The whole structure of the play, the whole design of the defensive game plan in that particular moment was screwed. You had a couple of guys out there, but literally, the Vikings have no timeouts. If they complete a ball in the middle of the field and can't get out of bounds, the game is over. Maybe you have one safety up top, way deep down, 30 yards down the field, and that is it. It is all about defend the sideline, defend the sideline. If you got to put 9 people on the sideline, that's what the hell you do. If you give Case Keenum 45 seconds to throw the damn ball, then that's what you do. But you cannot allow them to get out of bounds. So to sit there and just blame Marcus Williams on that particular play when there are other things you could potentially blame on that particular play, and more specifically, other things that you could blame in that whole game, how about that Saints defense allowing the Vikings, after the Saints had taken the lead, allowing the Vikings to drive back down and kick a field goal with less than 2 minutes to go. And then after the Saints went down, got their own field goal, instead of being able to run out the clock and leave the Vikings no time, they still left time for Case Keenum and the Vikings, allow them to get a couple of completions to get in a position where that type of thing could even happen to begin with. Don't sit there and blame Marcus Williams. It's so stupid, and we do it as a culture. The media does it. Fans do it. It's so stupid. One play does not a game make. One play does not decide a victory or a loss. Period. There is no time in the history of any sport, any game, where you literally can point to one play, no matter how big or significant or dramatic it was, and say, that's why we won. No, there are a whole series of events that play out. Runs that aren't scored, runs that are scored, touchdowns that are scored, touchdowns that aren't, turnovers that happen, turnovers that don't. All of these different things play into the entirety of the body of work of that game. So people need to stop blaming Marcus Williams and just say, you know what, sometimes that's football. It's a bad play. It was a bad mistake. But I promise you, it wasn't the only bad play or the bad mistake for the New Orleans Saints on Sunday in Minnesota. Because if it was, the Saints probably would be advancing to the NFC Championship game to play the Eagles in Philly next Sunday. But ultimately, they're not. So that means there was more than one mistake made in that game. How about blaming the offense that scored bupkis in the first half? How about blaming the defense, the entirety of the defense, for allowing the Vikings to get in position to kick a field goal with less than 2 minutes to go, and then letting them gain a little bit of yardage to where that Diggs play could even happen to be feasible to begin with? Stop blaming Marcus Williams. It's stupid, and if you do, you're a tool.